gonna be so pleasant about that place. Even your emotion had an echo in so much space. And when you out there without care, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know, no. I just know too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly. And I hope that you're having the time of your life. Think twice. That's my only advice. Oh, who do you think you are? Oh, bless your soul. You think you're...
Hey, everybody. How are you? Trust that you are well. Listen, I'm still trying to suss myself out here. I'm still trying to find my feet when it comes to the world of vlogging, the world of all things vlogging. I don't get everything right, but I am on a trajectory. I am scaling up to some degree. Please forgive my inadequacy when it comes to broadcasting. If this picture is buffering, now forgive me if that's the wrong terminology. Buffering. I don't even know what that means. But if this video is in any way sort of freezing and doing all of that, guys, I have done everything within my power to try and make sure that I give you the best quality. And sometimes I fall short. That's the truth there, boy. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being with me. Timothy Luambila says, share what happened when you went off without saying bye 2 or 3 days ago, around 18 hours. Okay, I'm so glad you asked me that. The truth is, what happened was I didn't charge my phone. So my phone, the monitor, my camera went off, but my audio was still connected. And being the amateur that I am, I thought for some reason, I thought it was the internet. It wasn't the internet. I discovered later on that it was my phone. It wasn't charged. Thank you. Field says the picture quality is good. It's clear. Well, I'm glad. Thank you. All right, let's get into it. I just wanted to bring something to you very quickly. I just wanted to share my thoughts on this. As we come to the close, of the year, this 2021, all of you know that one of the topics that is red hot at the moment, as far as the opposition parties are concerned, of course, the issue is who is going to take over from President Edgar Lungu. As President Lungu leaves politics, having served 7 years in government, having served 7 years as president, it's now time to pass the baton. The question then is, who will President Lungu, or who will the Patriotic Front as a party, who will they select as their next president, as they prepare themselves, as they grope through the darkness of democracy, as they try to find their footing in all things politics. Who will take over from President Lungu? That is the all encompassing, all elusive question. And I put it to you. I put it to you, my brothers and sisters, my SML TV viewers. Who do you think will be the next president of the Patriotic Front? Not that it matters, because it doesn't. But as a topical issue, I think it's important for us to talk about this because it is a topical issue. So I put it to you, who do you think is going to be the next president? As you think about that, I must tell you that the Word of God says in the book of Proverbs, chapter 26, verse 11, speaking under the unction of the Holy Spirit, the Word of God says, as a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. Do you know what that means? Do you have any idea what that means? It means if you go back to the thing that caused you pain, the thing that caused you grief, the thing that brought you so much disorientation, the thing that put you in a state of anguish and anxiety and difficulty. If you go back to that thing, then you are a fool. Now, I said all that to say this, and I know this is going to be very controversial, but I believe it. I do. I have often said that, and these are things, there were certain things that we couldn't say when the Patriotic Front was in play. That is to say, when they were in government. There are certain things you simply couldn't say. You risked losing your livelihood because of retribution from the party. Dare you speak against them? Of course, there were a few brave individuals. I wouldn't count myself one of them because it was not at that time. It simply wasn't in my favor to do that. But there were certain individuals that set aside their reputation, they set aside their livelihoods, they set aside really their safety for the sake of speaking for the Zambian people. We had a cluster of people that used to do that. And I could be here all night, all day, if I tried to name each and every one of them. You know who they were. But you must understand that the truth is the Patriotic Front was the most brutal, the most oppressive regime that this nation has ever had. Look at what they did. And I said this the other day, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying this because I think, people lose track of who they are when you don't listen to history. History is a very good teacher, but oftentimes people ignore history at their own peril and to their own detriment. Our Zambian history, or the PF's history, the Patriotic Front's history, is replete with many examples of how they disenfranchised members of our societies and our communities for speaking against them. People like GBM, Geoffrey Mwamba, who did everything within his power to build an empire from the sweat of his brow. A man that worked tirelessly to gain the position and notoriety that he once had, only for it to be snuffed out, only for it to be crushed by the Patriotic Front because Geoffrey Mwamba dared to speak against them. They crushed him. I could go on and on. Chishimba Kambwidi, Chishimba Kambwidi, who we listen to now, who we hear now. Chishimba Kambwili's voice is a faint whisper in the wind, because there was a time when he was so vociferous. He was a firebrand. He stood on the side of the people of Zambia, pointing out the ills and the wrongs and the injustices of the Patriotic Front. But he couldn't handle the pressure. Who could? Who could handle the pressure? The louder he spoke, the harder the PF hit. And they threw everything at him. Finally, they brought him down to nothing. They reduced him to a faint whisper of what he once was. Why? Because of reprisal, retribution. The mighty Patriotic Front came down on him like a ton of bricks, and finally they got him exactly where they wanted him. And then all of a sudden, the same message he used to preach, because you remember, Wachishimba Kambwidi was the very first man, as far as I know, the very first man that charged President Lungu with inadequacies. The very first man that used the phrase "Vapompwe," and he did it with such bravado and such vociferousness. And then here it is, after they beat him to a pulp and after they boxed him into a corner. And they basically said to Wachishimba Kambwidi, they said, you join us or you die. Of course, not literally. I'm using that figuratively. I'm using the word die as figuratively. The Patriotic Front looked at Chishimba Kambwidi and said, if you don't stop going against our grain, you will be a rumor. And the mighty Patriotic Front will snuff the life, the political life out of you until nobody will even remember your name. And so it was that Wachishimba Kambwili, after having been threatened, boxed into a corner, decided to rejoin the very party that he spoke against. He decided to stand on the same platform with the same man that he called Vapompwe, and the man he called corrupt. That's how he said it. It wasn't easy, but it was a survival technique. He addressed the issue in his spirit and his soul. And no doubt he sat with his family, as you often do in these situations. You sit down with your wife, your kids, your family, and you weigh the pros and cons. Is it worth it? You begin to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it for me to speak the truth and yet lose my livelihood? Is it worth it for me to call out these group and this vagabond of criminals? Is it worth it for me to call them that and lose my ability to take care of my family? Is it worth it? And I would imagine, I wasn't there, but I would imagine that Wachishimba Kambwili came to the riveting conclusion that if I don't rejoin the Patriotic Front politically, I'm going to die. I won't have anything. And so he did. Do you see the oppressive nature of the PF? Do you see this? So now, as we approach the 2021 elections, and we keep talking about this because it's a reference point that needs to be noted. I was so amused. I was just watching Mr. Bowman Lusambo, who in my view is the very personification of hypocrisy. Listening to him speak about how, the new government, the UPND, President Hichilema doesn't know what he's doing. This is coming from Bowman. And when I hear Bowman speak, it's like listening to a gong. It's like listening to a cymbal that's out of tune. It's like listening to a piano that's missing several keys. It's like listening to a guitar with one string. It's a mess. When the Patriotic Front lost the election, they didn't know what hit them. They were lost. I mean, they were just dumbfounded. They lost their bearings. They simply couldn't believe that the Zambian people spoke, and they spoke in unison. And here's part of the problem. Part of the problem is the Patriotic Front have not gone through the 5 stages of grief. They refuse to recognize the 5 stages of grief. And I'm going to go through it with you. The first thing, and as you know, grief means intense sorrow because of a loss. In this case, grief for the Patriotic Front because they lost the election. And so much was hanging in the balance for them. And because the loss was so big and so colossal and so huge, they failed to come to terms with the loss. They feel that the Zambian people betrayed them, but we didn't betray you. We just said we didn't want to be represented by you anymore. That's all. It's got nothing to do with hating you. Nobody hates you. It just simply, the elections were our way of saying to you, we need to try someone else. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem with the Patriotic Front, one of many problems, is that the Patriotic Front had this idea that God had ordained them to be where they were. Oh, that's not true. God didn't ordain you to do anything. God gave us the ability to choose. At one time, we did choose you, but then democracy being what it is, because it has a cycle, it has a tenure, it has an expiration date, we chose differently. That's all it was. So the first stage of dealing with grief is denial. The PF, they were in denial in the beginning. Remember, they kept on talking about, no, bora ni 90 minutes. That was denial. They could see the writing on the wall, but they refused to accept the reality of what they were seeing. Denial is the first thing. Then they got angry. Anger is the second stage of denial. And we saw the Patriotic Front angry. Remember about Davis Wheeler? This was after the elections, and a group of young people went to the Patriotic Front's secretariat office there. They ransacked the place. They destroyed it. The PF got a dose of what they had done to so many different people for so many years. They got a dose of it. They reaped what they sowed. They reaped what they had been sowing for years. The seed of violence, the seed of dissension, the seed of division. They reaped it. And Davis Mwila became angry. Remember when the press went over to the Patriotic Front Secretariat and it was destroyed. Papers all over the place, strewn all over the place. The place was in disarray. And Davis Mwila looked at the camera and said, this was a day after 777 had been declared president. A day after. Mwila says, we are waiting. We are waiting for the dollar to fall. He promised. He promised free education. We are waiting. We are waiting. Mwila was angry. The third stage of grief is bargaining. You bargain, you sort of try to make a deal. Well, that doesn't always work. It's worked for one particular person, $65 million. You bargain, okay, let's make this deal. The fourth stage, depression. Vane nipanotuli, it is here where we are. Did you know that that's the direct translation of the phrase nipanotuli? It is here where we are. You haven't seen depression like the depression that the Patriotic Front is about to go through, especially once they select their leader. Whoever the president of the Patriotic Front is going to be, depression is going to be your bedfellow. Because then you will realize how real this stuff really got. Depression. It's coming. It's not even there yet. You have to wait for them to select their president. Then you'll know what real, quintessential, authentic, pure depression is. But you have to deal with it. You just have to deal with it. Finally, acceptance. You accept it. This is my new reality. This is what I'm going through. This is where I am. I want to be there, but I'm here. I accept the situation as it is. This will only happen in 2026 when the PF lose that election. Then they will accept. But it's a process. They have to go through the process. Now, in as far as who I think the next president of the PF is going to be, first of all, let me tell you who wants to be president, but who can never be president. Now, let me stop there and say, there's this thing in Zambia. Zambians don't like saying never and don't ever say so-and-so can never be such and such, because you don't know what God has prepared for that person. That's true. I concede. And you're right. You have a very valid point there. But from a practical point of view, we know this would never happen. You know why? Because the bar of leadership, the bar of the quality of leadership has been raised. My elbows are ashy. Yeah, on Facebook, my elbows are ashy. Chap, what you want? Tau subire vaseline. Yeah, na ba imona kade. Tumwe wata subire vaseline. So yeah, that was topic hapa. Did you see Mwewa's elbows? They were so ashy. What's going on with that? I mean, you would think the man would apply some type of lotion on his elbows, but oh no. His elbows are ashy. Did you see that? And then someone, anyway. So here's the thing. But from a practical point of view, it's simply not possible. Bowman Lusambo wants to be the president of the Patriotic Front. Do you know this? Can you believe that? Bowman wants to be the president of, he's always wanted to be president. Do you remember when there's a video that went around? This was when he was fakely campaigning for Miles Sampa. You know, he was handing out flyers for Miles, but really he didn't want he'd never liked Miles. He didn't want Miles to be the mayor. He was just doing that for the sake of doing it. And Bowman didn't know that someone was recording him. And as he was handing out the flyers for Miles, and I'm talking about Miles Sampa, okay? Let me bring you up to speed. Let me be clear. Bowman Lusambo was in a fake way campaigning for Miles Sampa, when the truth is Bowman never really liked Miles, okay? And that's the truth. But Bowman had to do it because, you know, they're from the same party. So here it is. Bowman's out on the road and he's handing out flyers. And I think this was on Great East Road, near Manda Hill, near the bridge. And he was handing out flyers for the mayor. And one of the people that Bowman handed the flyer to was recording him. And he asked Bowman, "Do you want to be mayor one day?" And he said, "No, mayor, I want to be president." Which, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know, we all have ambitions. I mean, if that's your ambition, that's your ambition. Nobody should fault you for wanting to be what you want to be. But there is a practical component to that desire. I mean, I could want to be an astronaut. But if I don't do the necessary things, and if I don't go through the necessary steps for me to become an astronaut, I'm never going to become an astronaut just because I say it or just because I rely on luck. No. There's a practicality component to these things. Okay. So here it is. We know Bowman wants to be the president of the PF, but I can tell you, you think the PF are going to allow Bowman to be their president? Are you kidding me? They're a bunch of crazy people, but they're not that crazy. They're a bunch of lunatics, but they're not that loony. So let's scratch that. So forget Bowman. Which leaves me now, about Given Lubinda, he said he doesn't want to be president. At least that's what I read. He doesn't want to be that. Okay? So which leaves then the only candidate, Vachishimba Kambuidi. What's sad about that, even though Vakambwili is someone that I love and I hang out with sometimes, you know, I would hope that he would stop preaching that message of tribalism. Unfortunately, if he became the president of the PF, that brand of tribalism, that alarmist message of tribalism, he wouldn't stop. It would just get louder and bigger, louder and bigger. But I want to believe that the Zambian people are not attracted to that. So I think the PF need to be careful how they move from this point going forward. They need to be careful because you'll end up having a party that's purely based on tribal lines. That is not attractive. I must tell you. Okay? All righty. Thought I'd share that with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. 30 minutes I've been speaking. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.